Well, Flames fans taking a kick in the nuts and a kick in the ass at the same time this off-season. However, things I think I say got softened the blow with the case with Matthew Tkachuk. Hi there, it's Brett Hornby here, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. And fresh off the Calgary Flames losing Johnny Gaudreau to the Columbus Blue Jackets as an unrestricted free agent and come up with not even a rock. However, we did get a rock when we traded away Jerome McGinley and Jay Bouwmeester back in the day. Well, Matthew Tkachuk was a totally different reason, and I'm going to say how he played it out was best for the team. And I think for what we got in return, we definitely did very well. As both Johnny Gaudreau, he was an unrestricted free agent, which meant he could sign with any team on the market. And surprisingly, he picked Columbus. Matthew Tkachuk was a restricted free agent, meant that he was still a free agent, but he wasn't just open to the market. And he was due a qualifying offer for at least $9 million, and any team could have come in and gave an offer sheet, and the team had 7 days to match or receive compensation based on what it is. But ultimately, the Calgary Flames did kind of protect themselves from that by going with team arbitration. And then we knew that we were going to get kicked in the balls and the ass at the same time when Matthew Tkachuk said he also wasn't willing to sign long term. So we were hoping we were going to get a big trade. And all the speculation was that he was born in St. Louis. He wanted to go to St. Louis. And then he also expanded his horizons a little on picking teams that had a more favorable state tax. Well, apparently the rumor deal that we would have got from the St. Louis Blues would have involved Vladimir Tarasenko. Not too sure. We definitely would have had to get Jordan Kyrou, or also there was a possibility of, trying to think of his name right now, it's slipping my mind, Robert Thomas. There was also a first round pick thrown in there, or Torrey Krug. But I'm going to say ultimately he is going to the Florida Panthers, and oh boy, we were not that stupid to take this offer. But the big key thing is going to be is what are we going to do with the assets that we got. If we're going to keep those assets, I think we did very well. And ultimately, it was actually a sign and trade. Because you keep hearing that we traded him, then Florida signed him to that deal. Apparently, technically, we signed him first to that 8-year deal worth $76 million, which pays him $9.5 million. Then we traded him to Florida, and in return, we also sent a conditional 4th-round pick in 2025. In return, we get Jonathan Huberdeau, a forward that we could probably say could easily replace Johnny Gaudreau at the top line, being the playmaker. We also got a top defenseman named Mackenzie Weegar. And we hear this Cole Swin, a center prospect, who's also intriguing. And of course, a first-round pick in 2025, the condition being that the pick is lottery protected, and if it becomes a lottery pick, then it will get moved to 2026. So both draft picks involved could either get used in 2025 or 2026, depending on what happens with that first-round pick. I'm going to say, if that was the offer we were going to get for Matthew Tkachuk, considering he was not willing to sign long term, and I'm going to say he definitely had the best interest of the team in mind. Unlike Johnny, where I felt he waited till the absolute last second and said, I'm not going to sign, and hit market. Or if he could have said that a couple weeks ago, he could have at least recouped something, or traded his rights and had an 8-year deal. Well, Matthew Tkachuk definitely is a special player. Definitely deserves a special return. However, the thing that I'm going to say would need to happen for the Calgary Flames to say we won this deal is that both Jonathan Huberdeau and Mackenzie Weegar, they're both pending unrestricted free agents next year. As actually right now, Jonathan Huberdeau cap hit is $5.9 million, and Mackenzie Weegar's is $3.2 million. They're definitely going to be in for a lot more money next season. But if you look at the salary cap situation, the Calgary Flames, the bulk of the team have contracts coming off the books next year into 2024. So that I don't think will not be a problem. But shortly after when we made that trade, apparently there was already speculation in that Jonathan Huberdeau wasn't going to maybe play in Calgary, and he was not happy with getting traded to Calgary. But I'm going to read more that the reason why he was not happy that he got traded was not because he was getting traded to Calgary. But apparently Jonathan Huberdeau said that he was talking to the Florida Panthers a couple weeks prior on a long-term extension and staying long-term in Florida. And then all of a sudden, it was late Friday night that this trade happened. That all of a sudden it's like, oh, you're getting traded instead. I mean, I guess, that would sour anyone when you, a couple weeks prior, that you get signed, talking about an extension, and then suddenly get traded, but then things changed with Matthew Tkachuk suddenly being on the market. Where the Flames wouldn't have done this. They would have definitely tried to sign him long term, and just like Johnny Gaudreau, where you left some money on the table, Matthew Tkachuk apparently left some money on the table. Apparently, I heard one last ditch effort the Flames made to Matthew Tkachuk was to sign him for an 8-year deal that would have paid him $11 million a season, and he was going to be captain. He easily would have been captain of the Calgary Flames if he committed to long term, but he didn't want to sign long term, which still got to wonder, did something change in the off season, or they just lie? Because both Johnny Gaudreau and Matthew Tkachuk said up until the end of the playoffs and media green garbage bag day, they both said that they were wanting to sign long term, but then ultimately they didn't. They wanted to sign closer to home, which that's definitely a struggle that Canadian markets have, especially with American superstars, because the fact that the economic system, taxation system is definitely a little harsher in Canada. Plus you got weather. Well, I think Matthew Tkachuk is going to enjoy the weather a little more in February in Sunrise, Florida, than here in Calgary, Alberta, waiting for that Chinook. I mean, yes, they have the advantage there, and there's no state income tax, so he gets to take more home, but that's definitely the thing that both Jonathan Huberdeau and Mackenzie Weegar are both going to have to accept now that they're coming to Calgary. But already the Calgary Flames, they've been trying to make all the effort, try to sell this team that, we have a place for you. This is a place to be long term, and wine and dine them. Apparently, Brad Sherlivin already did that with Jonathan Huberdeau, and he's planning on doing that with Mackenzie Weegar. Speculation is that the Montreal Canadiens are going to want to sign Jonathan Huberdeau next season because he is from St. Jerome, Quebec, which is close to Montreal. But I just hope that, I understand you weren't happy getting traded. I'm going to interpret you were not happy you got traded because you got traded, not because you were going to Calgary after apparently talking, extension with the team for 2 weeks prior. I also know that Oliver Bjorkstrand, he was not happy that he got traded from Seattle, or to Seattle from Columbus, because he actually apparently already bought a house and did all, things about selling in Columbus. He did all that and then he got traded. But Columbus also had some money to spend after they signed Johnny and locked up Patrick Laine. That Oliver Bjorkstrand definitely needed to go to be a cap casualty. But this is definitely one heck of a return the Calgary Flames had. I liked this move. This I have to agree was the best move. Getting Johnny Huberdeau basically can easily replace Johnny Gaudreau and his playmaking ability. On the top line, Mackenzie Weegar definitely is going to make our defense even better. Hopefully, it doesn't sound like Chris Tanev is going to be available at the start of the season after sustaining injuries from the playoffs. And after hearing what he suffered through, it was incredible that he actually got to suit up for a couple games in the Edmonton series. So I'm going to say, offensively, I'm going to still say we definitely take a hit back because we do not have Matthew Tkachuk and Johnny Gaudreau. But getting Johnny Huberdeau will be a nice replacement. But we're still going to lose some offense because we don't have both of them. Interesting that 3 of the top 9 scorers from last season are all going to play for new teams. But the other thing we're definitely going to miss from Matthew Tkachuk is Brady in the stands during the playoffs. That was a secondary thing. But the real big thing that we're going to miss from Matthew Tkachuk is just that grit, and the being that pest. We're definitely going to lose that, but we could still maybe recoup some of the offense, maybe with a more healthier Sean Monahan, a whole season of Tart Toffoli, could potentially Jacob Pelche. Could he make the team? And in terms of maybe having some grit, could Ed Ruzicka or maybe Martin Pospisil, could they be somebody you could put in the lineup for certain teams? But I think we still have some assets within to not totally replace it, but I still say with the departure of Johnny Gaudreau and Matthew Tkachuk, and with this trade, I still say being in the Pacific Division, I don't think necessarily we're going to win the Pacific Division again. I still think this team's a playoff team and definitely a top 3 team still in the Pacific Division. But I'm definitely now hoping that Jonathan Huberdeau and Mackenzie Weegar definitely, hopefully they are willing to sign long term, and that's what they both said on their Zoom calls day one. But forgive me for saying, yeah, I've heard that before. Johnny Gaudreau and Matthew Tkachuk, I recall, also said those words too, and they all of a sudden decided to go bye-bye. But speaking of Matthew Tkachuk, what kind of reception do you think he's going to get when he comes back home to play the Calgary Flames? And take a look at the schedule. Actually, we get to see him twice in a couple weeks span. Because just like Johnny Gaudreau will play them on the road first, and then they have the home game. So now Florida games will have more intriguing. In November, we get to play Matthew Tkachuk twice in a 2-week span. The first time the Calgary Flames will get to see Matthew Tkachuk and then Jonathan Huberdeau and Mackenzie Weegar making their returns to Florida. This will happen on Saturday, November 19th. The Calgary Flames will be in Florida. So that'll be the first time that those players will get to face each other in new teams. But Tuesday, November 29th, the Calgary Flames host the Florida Panthers. So this will be the first time that the Calgary Flames will get to see Matthew Tkachuk as a Florida Panther. So I guess, just like in the Johnny Gaudreau video, I'll have to ask, what kind of reception do you think he's going to get? And obviously, what do you think of this trade? This definitely was a great trade for next season, for sure. It short term definitely does help the Calgary Flames. It doesn't make the kick to the nuts and the ass as hard. However, we might be feeling that next year at this time in free agent frenzy if they don't resign. Of course, people say, well, you can always trade them at the deadline. I think if we're trading them at the deadline, it probably means we're giving up on the season. And if we're there, that means somebody else will probably be making that call. Because this is definitely a trade that's definitely going to define Brad Treliving's tenure as general manager. I mean, the Flames, I think, did everything they could to keep both Johnny Gaudreau and Matthew Tkachuk. Ultimately, given that where they're from and what the Flames can offer, and home was more intriguing to them, they exercised their rights as they do, and we had to accept the decision. I'm going to say, when it comes to Johnny Gaudreau, I'm going to say he's going to a slightly less competitive team. While Matthew Tkachuk, I'm going to say he's going to go to a slightly more competitive team that has a better chance of getting the Stanley Cup right now. And maybe the Belle of Florida might get that extra edge with Matthew Tkachuk in Florida. And oh yeah, let's hope the Ottawa Senators make the playoffs, because Brady and Matt are now in the same division. So there's that to look forward to as well. Although it was fun to see Brady in the stands in the sea of red during the playoffs here. We're going to miss that. I mean, obviously, there's not really one memory that I have with Matthew Tkachuk that I just say he was definitely a special player. That he shows he had the offensive ability and grit, and just how skilled he was. I'm always going to remember all the clutch goals that he scored. Like, I know he had a couple of last-second goals in Nashville. I always kept calling him Clutch Tkachuk in my game recaps, because he did score those, big goals, like late in the game to either tie it up or take the lead. I mean, Matthew Tkachuk did score the tying goal in Game 7. Mind you, it was, 8 minutes, hit the 8-minute mark of the second period in Game 7 against Dallas, but Dallas kept hanging around because Jake Ottinger was, a solid brick wall with cinder blocks and sandbags and a whole army of 10 people deep in front of him. That's how strong he played in net. So any goals he got on him was huge in that series. But I definitely, once again, I have mixed emotions on it. I just say I'm glad Matthew Tkachuk was open and said, ultimately, I'm not willing to sign long term, and Calgary did the best they can, and I'm going to say they did the best they could. And once again, it goes back to those rumors we've had for the last couple of years, which definitely makes it tougher for maybe attracting American talent to the Calgary Flames, and any other Canadian city, just because of the climate, the economics, also the fact that the media. I mean, Matthew Tkachuk probably won't be as noticed as much in Florida as he is here in Calgary. I mean, that's just the nature of the beast, and you could say that's one of the reasons why Canada hasn't won a Stanley Cup since 1993. But another crazy rumor is that Vegas was one of the teams that he wanted to go to. It would have been very funny if there was a rumor that Calgary was going to trade Tkachuk to Vegas for Jack Eichel 1-for-1. That would have been very funny, because there was that rumor last November when Jack Eichel was on the market, and apparently Kevin Weeks said that was Matthew Tkachuk of 4 assets that we were going to pitch to get Jack Eichel. But I think ultimately Vegas and Buffalo made that deal because Buffalo wanted Peyton Krebs. And looking at that deal right now, I'm going to say Buffalo did pretty well. And I'm going to say if we had to trade Matthew Tkachuk, we needed a Jack Eichel-like blockbuster trade to make it worth it. And this was it. I mean, my bare minimum trade was, if I was a general manager, was, I better get a first, I better get a second, I better get a top 6 forward, and maybe a prospect. And that would have been my starting point. Like, that's if you were wanting to strip down or hang up the phone. This was a great deal for the Calgary Flames. But how great this deal is going to depend on Johnny Huberdeau and Mackenzie Weegar signing. When I first saw his trade, I was like, yes, that's a great move, considering Matthew was not coming back, and we already lost Johnny. But then I say, we will win this trade if Mackenzie Weegar and Jonathan Huberdeau sign long term. And that's still Ridstein. So I'm going to be anxiously waiting how they fit in with the team, and they will sign long term. Because I think if Calgary's in a playoff race jockeying for position, we're not going to trade him at the deadline either. So let's just hope they like it here. I'm going to say thanks, Matt, for all you've done for the Calgary Flames, and I doubt Jonathan Huberdeau and Mackenzie Weegar and Cole Schwint are watching this video, but they are. I just want to say welcome to the Sea of Red, Johnny Gaudreau, as well as Mackenzie Weegar and Cole Schwint. Hopefully all the best as a Calgary Flame. And I would like you to all say, as a Calgary Flame, to make this trade worth it. I think you'll like it here in Calgary. The fans will definitely embrace you, especially if you fit in right away. I know a couple other players that first didn't like coming here when I did a couple trade retrospects. All too liked to hear. One was Lane McDonald. Apparently he was not too happy when he got traded from the Calgary Rockies to the Calgary Flames despite being closer to home, because he thought at the time it was the worst team in the league, which the Calgary Rockies were, who are now the present New Jersey Devils. He thought it was the worst team in the league, not Wyndham. But when it was the Calgary Flames wanted you, and then when he settled in, we liked you here. And Joey Mullen, when we traded him from the St. Louis Blues to the Calgary Flames. At first, he didn't seem to like that trade, but after he got that big welcome by the Calgary Flames, and he was one of the big pieces that we eventually acquired, that led us to win the Stanley Cup. He was liked here in Calgary. I'm going to think that'll be the same with Jonathan Huberdeau and Mackenzie Weegar. There's definitely spots for him in Calgary. I think they'll fit in just fine with the Calgary Flames, and it'll make taking the sting of losing Johnny Gaudreau and Matthew Tkachuk out a little easier. But please, do sign long term. I'd like to see you. You're going to look great in Calgary Flames gear for a long time. So that's all I have for this video. So I just wanted to say, if you want to follow along with this Calgary sports fans journey, the Flames have been roughing Stampeders as well as the Calgary FC. Just make sure you hit like, subscribe, as I mostly do talk Calgary sports on each channel. I'll recap games and stories and that, but I also do a variety of non-sports content like personal vlogs, stand-up comedy. I also do share my experience them on the road. Rare sport event, so if it all sounds like it'd be interesting to watch, do follow along with this Calgary sports fans journey. You know what to do, just make sure you like, subscribe, and also my other social links down in the description below. And I also have my second channel in Brad Hornby Shorts, so I appreciate like, subscribe both here on my main channel as well as my second channel. So I guess I'll have to say, what do you think of this trade, and any favorite memories of Matthew Tkachuk here in Calgary? Oh yeah, I guess mouth guards here, they're safe, but mouth guards in Florida are like, oh man, we're going to be chewed sideways all game. But what do you think of, the best of the three players involved? How do you think they're going to do with their new teams and their new roles? So I just want to say thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.